Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. Have you ever wondered how to navigate grief? We've got a great show for you. Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. I'm Ryan Morris, and as always, I am here with your host, Nicholas T. Smith. And if you haven't subscribed to Wake Up with Giants TV on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe right now. And join us on Facebook. We're a tribe of giants. If you haven't ordered the book, go to giantsandsmalls.com and you can see what is sweeping the nation. The little book that has a huge impact, The Giants and the Smalls. And Nick, you introduce our guest. I still introduce the show like it was like a monster truck rally. It's a hard thing not to. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
But sometimes that's a heavy thing. I was going to come in with a softer intro about grief.
Yeah, you could do Sunday.
Have you ever wondered how to handle all your grief? I'm sure our guest will be able to help us navigate it much better than I would.
I think so, and it's a great topic, and I'll introduce you, Paula, here in just a second. But one of the journeys in the Giants journey, so we have 12 journeys that we go through when I'm coaching, and I was teaching about that this morning, is grief. And grief is vital for growth. And so I'm grateful that I'm going to use a lot of GR words today. Grateful that we can be here to do this with Paula because she's a master of it. And she's got a book that we'll talk about later on in the story. But I'm going to do my best not to butcher this, Paula. So correct me if I do this wrong. But at 54, Paula became a widow. She left her job and began a year of travel to heal her heart. And so as her travel ended, COVID-19 began, the pandemic began. And so the strategies for navigating the grief of her husband's death from throat cancer also helped with the grief from the pandemic and the social unrest. And so losing her freedom and lifestyle, she was thrown into the unknown just as her business began. That sounds familiar to me. That sounds like me and Ryan in building this. I mean, we started right when COVID hit. Her new book, Great Loss, Greater Love, The Art and Heart of Navigating Grief, chronicles her year of travel and is a #1 international bestseller on Amazon. She has 30 plus years experience as an event planner and contracting specialist with 12 years in author speaking management. And she's organized and managed 151 workshops around the world. Her company, GP Eventworx, specializes in event production for speaker teacher workshops, as well as grief retreats for women. She's traveled to 20 countries, some multiple times, and 40 U.S. states. And her goal is to visit 30 countries and all 56 states and territories by the end of 2025. Paula, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's so great to be here.
It's good to have you because like this topic is so vital in the journey. And I think, people think broadly of the term grief as something that only occurs when death occurs or there's a divorce, but there's so many other ways for that to happen. And so I really look forward to exploring this journey with you. Good grief, right?
Good grief, yeah.
You look like you're 35.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I was playing around with what I could call myself, and I like the good grief concierge because I love to travel.
Oh, there you go. Dude, that is powerful.
Yeah. And I love what Ryan was saying in the beginning about, trying to make it, the intro kind of subdued. But one of the things I want to say to everybody is grief doesn't have to be sad and depressing. And you got to have fun. When I do my workshops, I tell people this is not going to be a workshop of crying and sadness and stuff. We are going to have fun. We're going to learn tools and tips, and grief, like you said, is an opportunity to grow. So why not have fun with it?
What's interesting is I find myself immediately going into the space of solemnness. When I hear that word grief, I immediately feel my body energetically go into that space of like calming down, wanting to be solemn and respectful and reverent almost in a way. But what you're offering here is the good grief concierge, is the idea that you can have fun with it.
Right.
So I'm looking forward to that. That's a new shift for me.
Yeah.
So can we kind of explore your journey from the very beginning?
Sure. Well, if the book actually started, well, I actually wrote it during lockdown during COVID. But it really started when my husband was diagnosed with cancer, and that was in November 2014. And he was diagnosed with throat cancer. Him and I had been working for many years in the science and spirituality realm, and we knew that his cancer in that area was all about expression, about speaking your voice. And he and I both grew up, were raised with the idea that we had to keep quiet. What we had to say wasn't important. You know, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all, kind of thing. So we held our energy here. And when you hold your energy there, especially that volatile kind of energy, it affects the body. And that's how any kind of illness or disease is created, I believe. And so we had a journey, really those 4 years, really all about that. You know, he took responsibility for what he created in his body. We made efforts to communicate better. As I was doing my job, my former job as an event director, I had the opportunity to introduce and give, you know, kind of be the MC at the events. And that really helped me to speak my voice. And it was a great opportunity to, you know, a lot of times when we're speaking in front of people, we're like, oh my God, they're not going to like what I have to say. Or they going to pay attention. But I had this perfect opportunity where, you know, I wasn't the main event, right? I was just introducing and giving information. So they wanted to know what I had to say.
Yeah.
Because they were anticipating what was coming, right? So it was a really great opportunity for me to just get comfortable with speaking my voice, hearing the sound of it. And knowing that what I had to say was important. So this whole book is about, the whole journey is about, you know, speaking our voice. My husband had some amazing, miraculous healing way back before I even met him. And he wanted to write that book, but he never felt like it was worthy enough or whatever. So I kind of am in this book writing for both of us. And I also like, you know, how you mentioned about the journey you take your clients through. And when I wrote this book, I wasn't quite sure how to tell it. And I don't know where I came across somebody, I don't know if it was on Facebook or somebody mentioned to me about the hero's journey. Yeah. And I thought, actually it was Cryon. I was doing I produced an event a while back with Cryon, and in his work, he's talking about the hero's journey, and his presentation is based on that. So I thought, wow, I can, you know, I could use that format. And I did a little bit of research, and, you know, of course, a lot of the great movies, you know, Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, the Matrix, all of those movies are based on the hero's journey. And so I found this document that was about creating like a screenwriter's format. And so I used that, and I created my book, and I created, you know, it's got 13 chapters and an epilogue. Each chapter isn't like exactly a month long or anything like that. But I was really amazed at how my journey matched up with the hero's journey. So, so it was a really great way to write. I've never written a book before, so I was concerned that I didn't know how to be a storyteller. But using that format was really great. And the reason I decided to leave my job, my husband died on June 1st, 2018. And I ended up being his caregiver for about the last 8 or 9 months of his life. He had a feeding tube put in, a tracheostomy so he could breathe. And so there was a lot of caregiving stuff that I, was kind of squeamish about doing. I'm not a nurse type person. And so that was a huge learning about compassion and just caring for somebody out of love and avoiding the squeamish stuff. So I'm really good at pushing stuff down. So I'd been doing that all my life. So I just pushed all that ickiness down and just moved forward and took care of it. And one of the things that I learned through that after, looking back on it was that as so many of us do, we don't take care of ourselves. We take care of other people. We take care of our work. And during those 4 years, I was almost 100% completely focused on him or my job and not on me. And I had a couple of blood tests done that showed I had, some areas of concern. I had some other tests run that people had said, well, maybe you ought to keep an eye on this area. And I was just like, yeah, I know. I know that my thoughts create reality, but But ultimately, I was kind of bypassing all of that by assuming that because I was doing good work in the world, that God was going to take care of me, right? Spirit, somebody was going to take care of me. But I figured out ultimately that I'm responsible for taking care of me. And what happened was on my 55th birthday, about 3 or 4 months after my husband died, I was in the hospital having my appendix out. And when I looked up, I'm a big believer, as I said, that we create our illnesses. And when I looked up what the emotional component of appendicitis is, it's about fear of life and blocking the flow of life. And I believe that I sacrificed my appendix to learn that. And so what I ended up doing, actually, even when I was after my surgery, I was still focused. I got to do the next thing. I was supposed to travel in 2 days to the UK for an event. And obviously that wasn't going to happen. So instead of focusing on my health, I focused on an event coming up 3 or 4 weeks later in Mexico. And finally, I figured out that I had to put me first. I wasn't going to be able to heal my heart, my body in that environment. So I had to create something new. And that's when I decided to resign and went on a year travel. I mean, I love to travel. And when I was traveling for work, I never really got the opportunity to see the places that I was in. Maybe a little bit here and there. You know, I was a big fan of jumping on those big red tourist buses and getting the 2 or 3 hour story of wherever I was. And so I decided I was going to go on a year of travel and just really be present wherever I was. And also, I knew it was important to put myself in a different environment, because one of the things that I've just, even just a couple of weeks ago, that really clicked with me is that we grieve the way we're conditioned. So I was always taught to keep quiet, right? So I grieve keeping quiet. I don't ask for help. I stuff everything down. I pretend like I'm okay. People that maybe are grew up being a victim, that's what they're used to being. That's how they're going to grieve, as a victim. If they're brought up to be a go-getter and, you know, positive, they're going to grieve that way, and they're going to be positive about the outcome, and they're going to look for help and ask for help. And it took me a long time to kind of figure that out. But what I knew was that if I wanted to be the new me, a higher version of me, the Paula without Gary, I needed to practice that somewhere. And I couldn't practice it in my current environment, because people know me the way I am. They see me as Paula and Gary. They see me as the quiet, calm person. And that's what they're comfortable with. And so, you know, as we all know with our families, friends, kind of everybody gets comfortable with how everybody is. And when somebody tries to change, it kind of throws a wrench in everything, right? And they're like, what's up? What's happened to you?
Yeah.
Want you back the old way, right? So I intuitively knew that if I went to other places, I could practice the new me. I could be the person that is proud of her voice, that speaks her truth, that is fun, that can just go on a road trip and pull off to the side of the road and spend 2 hours hiking around ruins, you know, checking things out. The old me wouldn't have really done that. And even like telling my family I'm going to do these things, they're like, are you sure going out by yourself? Is that safe? And, you know, so I just instinctively knew that that's what I needed to do. And it took me a little bit of time, you know, maybe about 2 or 3 months to get past the, you know, what I did was I traded my busyness of a caregiver and an event director to the busyness of a travel planner. So I wasn't still 100% present those first few months, because I'm used to just doing things and keeping my mind busy with organizing stuff, right? So then I instituted this little practice that I called the Day Tripper Challenge. And the reason I called it that is because, number one, the Beatles are my favorite band, and I love that song Day Tripper. And the Day Tripper to me was like, it's like a pattern interrupt. Like I could trip my mind into thinking something else when I was being depressed. And those 3 things that I focused on every day were finding something to be grateful for. Like, you know, you used your GR word, grateful is really important. Finding something to laugh about every day, because that raises your energy. And then the third thing is to find something divine. And it's not complicated. It takes just a few minutes. You know, it could be as simple as, I'm grateful that I woke up today. I'm laughing at myself because I missed my exit and I had, you know, wasn't paying attention. And the divine could be the sunset, so it's very simple things. It doesn't have to be like this big epiphany thing that happens, but there's reasons to be present every single day.
Yeah, I want to go back to what you were saying about the Gary-less Paula, right? There's things like that in our lives where we are known as us the way we are, and people know us that way, and that can kind of hold us in that environment. I think of, like the Gary-less Paula, the flourless cake, right? It's like these things, like you can't make a cake without flour. Watch me. You can't make a life without Gary. Well, watch me. And it's almost like the you-less you. Like there's this you-ness that people know about, but there's this other you that they don't. And so really speaking to that, having that opportunity to bring that out, this is, I wanted to emphasize that because it could be easy to gloss over that. And I think that's an important thing is to really bring out the you that's really always been there, but people don't see it.
Right. And it's funny too, because people, gosh, I didn't know you were funny. I didn't know you had a sense of humor. I didn't know that you like to, just on a whim go do something somewhere. You always seem so calm and like got to plan things out. And so it really is an opportunity. It was a big opportunity for me to break through that that veil of who people think I am. And really explore who I really am, which ultimately is connecting to spirit. I believe that's a big component of it. Is, we're all something bigger than just our human body. And we need to connect to that. And connecting to that helps us move through the grief. I mean, the grief's never going to go away, right? Because, you think about, we have memories, right? So we remember people, we remember jobs we left, we remember, friends that we left behind or that moved away or whatever. We remember those things but the important thing is when those memories come back up is how do I move through it now? Do I get sucked back into the sadness and spiral down and have to retreat back, or can I just remember the good things? That's another thing that was so important to me. And sometimes I have people kind of not, I can feel them like tensing up when I say this, is that there's a gift in every single thing that happens. There is a gift. I couldn't be the Paula I am today if Gary hadn't died. And, and it's hard sometimes to say that, but the truth of the matter is that's the truth,
How interesting.
How we move through things and how we find the gift and how we move forward is really, with the support of spirit. It's with the support of our community around us, finding people that will allow us to move into that and allowing ourselves. Ultimately, it's, us allowing ourselves.
That allowance is huge. I think of that, the gift, and I went through a divorce. There's a lot of grief that comes through divorce.
Right.
There's a gift that came from that. And the gift was that I dove fully into this book and this program. And here we've got this global community now, a year later. I mean, it took 11 years to get it to this point, but it took that year of grieving to kind of push it forward. Now, what I'm hearing in this, as you say, there's a gift in everything. I believe that. But what happens is sometimes as we're going through this, it's almost like the universe says, man, you are really going through some struggles. I want to give you a gift. And then some people will take that gift and they'll just throw it to the ground. And like, are you serious? Right. That's all you got me?
Right?
I had imagined, Nick, like, on Ace Ventura, when he's the UPS delivery guy, and he's just shaking it and kicks it down the hallway, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And sometimes, that's how I feel like I get my gifts. Sometimes like that's the thing I'm going through. I'm like, this isn't a gift. It's broken. It looks terrible.
Well, and that's why I think it's important to find a new community too. I mean, it doesn't mean you have to let go of the old, but if you find a new community that can help you understand those gifts, can show you that they've had a similar experience and that it really is a gift, then it helps. I mean, that's what I'm trying to, I kind of see my mission is to help people see the gift in that, because I went through a divorce too early on, and a divorce is it's a death of a relationship, right? So it's just as, I think almost maybe something, I'm probably going to make somebody mad here, but sometimes a divorce can actually be harder than a death because you don't really have that closure. I mean, you do, but you don't. I remember one time, I write about this in my book. I was in Australia and I had this dream that Gary, my husband Gary, left me for a former girlfriend. And I was so angry in the dream because I couldn't do anything about it. And I woke up, and it took me a little bit to reorient and realize, he didn't leave me. He's just dead. Right. And the thought that came to me was that, when somebody dies, they're gone and there's nothing that you can do about it. And you just have to move forward. When somebody leaves you, makes that choice to leave you, they're still around physically. So there's still that, even if you're the one who chose to leave, there's still that, should I have done that? Or, you kind of question it. There's a little bit of insecurity around the choice you made always. And especially if there's kids involved and houses or, money or whatever. So divorce, or even live a long-term relationship, you don't even necessarily have to be married. Sometimes that can be harder because that person is still there. They're still in the physical world. And when I wrote this book, that was one of the things, when I first started thinking about it, it's like, I don't want to just talk about death. I just don't want to be the sad widow that everybody feels sorry for and thinks I'm less because Gary's, I'm one less person, two is now one kind of a thing. But then the pandemic hit, and actually my mom said to me, well, what about divorce? Because she'd been divorced. And I thought, well, I've been divorced too. And you're right. Women, people need help through that as well. And then the pandemic hit, and then it's like everybody's grieving, and grief in itself is very similar no matter what the situation was that brought it on. And like I said earlier, we grieve the way we're conditioned. We also have to remember that we're not defined by the loss. A lot of people think that, oh, my husband died, that's what caused all the chaos in my life. Well, the conditioning was a start to that, that created that. And we have to be willing to want to step back and look at who we are. It's not the experience that happened, it's who we are. So it doesn't matter if it was a pandemic, a death, a divorce, being bullied, illnesses, they all bring on grief, and we have to. And the other thing that's interesting too is that I feel like I might have an easier time with the death of my husband than say somebody who might have experienced bullying. And you would think, well, the death is more hard than bullying. But because I've had a 20 plus year foundation of spiritual work, if somebody who's being bullied like a young kid maybe doesn't have that foundation, that could actually be worse for them. And harder for them than what I went through. So I when I wrote the book, I wanted this to really be for everybody. I mean, because it's not just about death. It's grief is, we all go through it. We all have experienced it.
I want to talk and take us off course a little bit. There's a little bit of an echo here. I don't know if we want to mute out there. The word grief comes from, I think it's Germanic or French, it's guere, which means heaviness, but it also means to be favored or to praise. Same root can mean heaviness and weightiness, but also a favoring or a praising. And there's this, like you said, there's a gift in everything. The magnitude of grief or heaviness varies. But in scale, if we were to look at it, and I'll say one of my favorite words here, in a fractal model, then who's to say that somebody's bullying isn't as severe as somebody who has somebody pass away? Right. In a fractal model, that would say that they're both of equal weight. Yes. It just depends on the experience around it. Now, also, the gifting of that is also varied. Who's to say that, one person's gift from that grief is any more valuable than another person's gift from that grieving? Like, there's two sides to it, and it's really all in that perception of scale in a way. Yeah,
I love how you say that too, because the other meaning, when you look at other cultures, like especially European cultures, maybe like Italy or Latin American cultures, they highly revere the people that have lost people. They take care of widows. They take care of widowers. Everybody, the community, bands around them and takes care of them and making sure they're taken care of. They have what they need. They're loved. And in our, Western, countries like the U.S., Canada, people don't really do that. I mean, we're so trained and conditioned that, oh, death is a scary thing, we don't want to talk about it. Oh, grief is such a horrible thing. If I connect with that person, I might catch it. And so we don't really take care of our grieving people like we should. And I think that's so important. It's a passage. It's an important passage for people to go through, because we're all going to go through it at some point or another. And we should support each other. So,
well, one of the things I talk about in the book, part of the journey, like one of the 12 journeys that we coach on, is around grief. And the reason for that is your life, for a lot of it, you're unconscious to how you're living life. And then you wake up to that and you're no longer unconscious of it. And then you resist what is, because it's so challenging. You're like, I don't want it to be this way. And so you end up fighting that. So you have to learn to accept that it is what it is. Like, you can't change that Gary passed away. So you have to adapt and adjust to that. If you resisted that, you'd be stuck in the cycle of fighting Gary not being there.
Right.
And then the grief is the part of recognizing that there are some things that are lost and having some sadness about that. We talk a lot about Susan Anderson's work and the swirl method, that when you have this shattering and there's this withdrawal, this internalization, this rage, and people think of rage and they think, well, that's a negative thing. And the beauty of rage is it gets you into action and out of apathy. And I'm wondering, are there some times in your life where you actually had some rage and it lifted you? It actually took you out of that apathy, got you into action, and your life got better because of that. Is that?
Right. Yeah. There was one point that, when somebody has an illness like Gary had, and you see somebody's body go from vibrant and healthy to just a shell of himself. I mean, he was like 180 pounds, 6 foot. And by the time he passed, he was kind of humped over. He looked like he was 62. He looked like he was 90 and
wow.
Just 130 pounds. I mean, just skin and bones. And, I didn't, like I said, when I was earlier, how in order to take care of him, I had to kind of stuff a lot of things down. And so, I felt guilty, like I wasn't the best caregiver, like I didn't do enough for him. And at one point when I came home from one of my trips, I probably about midway through the year, I came home for, I don't know, a month or so. And I decided to do a meditation. I was working to get that image of the sick Gary out of my head and replace it with the vibrant Gary. I wanted to remember that. And so that was the intention when I started the meditation. But what happened was I was brought into his body. It was the weirdest thing, into his sick body, and actually got to feel his pain, his like what the hell? How did this happen? Kind of feeling the surprise, the shock, the actual not being able to breathe, because he had this trach and we'd have to clean it out every few hours, so he could breathe. And so I felt all this physical stuff that he felt. And I really feel like that was a gift from him, that I could really feel what he went through, understand it, and also learn to avoid it for me, right? Because I was keeping a lot of stuff down still. And so I feel like that was his way of sharing with me, here's what happened to me. I don't want this to happen to you. Step past this and don't, see the bigger picture in it. There's a bigger picture in it. And I really feel like that was kind of a turning point for me on, as far as the guilt side of it, was that, okay, I did the best I could. There wasn't anything I could have physically done to make it better for him in his condition. They're just the only thing I could do was just love him, and that's what I did.
There's a grieving that occurs all the way back. I mean, even before he dies, there's this grieving of the life that you knew.
Right.
And then one of the models of grief talks about denial. Right. You that happens, you deny it. This can't be happening, and then you get mad, and then you bargain. Right.
Yeah.
And then you get depressed. And then you accept it. It's like, well, it is what it is. And it sounds like you kind of went through that process even before the death. Like, people look at the death as the hard thing. No, there was a lot that happened before that, because you had a lifestyle that now no longer would be the same.
Right.
Angie Barnett talks about the loss of a limb. She has homesickness for her leg. She wishes her leg were back. Right. It's gone. It was amputated, and it's not coming back. Brandon Salser and Jeff, is it Gibbons? Is that his last name? Brian? Yeah. Maybe we'll get it there. It doesn't, not that it
muted
matters.
out because there was a little bit of background. Griffin, Jeff. Yep.
So they're paralyzed, and there's a loss of mobility, right? Death and divorce, loss of a job, bullying, a change in the lifestyle as you knew it. And then this resistance to that, whatever that looks like. And that could be anything. And so there's micro grieving, right? Like these micro grief moments.
Yes.
Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, even you're right. It began from the moment he was diagnosed, really, because it's like, oh, God, here's what potentially is going to come. My grandfather had a throat cancer, so I had some experience around what that could be. And Gary opted not to do the traditional. He didn't do surgery and did some other less mainstream type stuff. And so I had to, I obviously supported him in whatever he wanted to do. But I know towards the end, when we went to the hospital, when he finally decided I need to get a feeding tube because I can't keep anything, I can't eat anything, I'm losing weight. And so we went in to do that. And when we got to the hospital, the look of the people, the nurses there, was like, oh my God, why? They didn't say this out loud, but I could feel it and hear it. It's like, why did you wait so long to bring him to us? And, so I was just honoring his choice, which I think is really important. But there's always that guilt that you didn't, gosh, I should have overstepped his choice, right? I should have done something different. But, ultimately when people are going through things, anybody, you have to honor the choice that they make. You don't always know why or
it's natural right? To question everything after the fact. I think that's totally normal. And I think a lot of people feel guilt behind that because they, I don't know. I think that's human. I think that's part of the human experience. You're going to question, if hindsight, they say hindsight's 20/20. Looking back at it, you can see it a lot more clearly than going through the mess of it all, the chaos of it during that moment. And you feel like you're doing the right thing and you know what? Truthfully, you probably are. If you're following your intuition and you're doing the best that you can, then you probably are. And even though it's a really, really hard thing to go through, that is one of the hardest things to go through is what you went through.
Yeah. And I'm a big believer of signs from our loved ones. And, one of the great things about Gary's illness was it afforded us the time to talk about it. We knew his death was coming, and it's like, okay, when you get there, make sure you let me know, send me signs of things that I know it's you. And just very recently, the other day, like I said, grief doesn't ever leave. It comes and goes. And the other day, I don't know what brought this on. But I got to thinking, I don't remember saying goodbye. I know we did, but memory gets kind of fuzzy sometimes. And I just started feeling really bad about that. It's like, did we not? Because if we did, I would surely remember that. Right. So I started, really feeling bad. And I went out and sat in my front porch in the kind of overlooking the garden there. And all of a sudden, five dragonflies showed up, and we're not near water at all. And the cover of my book, this is the cover of my book, and this is Gary's journal. So I have some of Gary's quote. Every chapter starts with a quote from his journal, and it's a dragonfly on the journal. So I really felt like that was just him saying, of course we said goodbye, here's 5 dragonflies just so you feel better, So I just really feel like, and honestly, before he died, I always kind of poo-pooed people saying, oh, I found a feather, or found pennies or whatever. But I've had some amazing signs come from him that I know would not happen. They aren't just coincidence, they're meaningful. And so I'm a big believer in looking for signs too from our loved ones, because they're still here. They're actually in a better place than we are. Yeah. Right. They're probably having way more fun than we're having here. I
wonder this too, if you look at the grief, like that, the signs can bring you into the presence. The grief can bring you into the present. The letting go, there's a quote that I love, and I will butcher this, but it's somewhere along the lines that letting go isn't a resigning, right? It's stepping into and embracing the present. And so grief is one of those processes that allows us to go through this. It feels like the refiner's firing away to get present again, because as you're going through this process, you're starting to become more and more present in your life. And so what happens though is I see people that won't go through that. They resist grieving and they resist accepting what is, almost like letting go is a resignation. And so they don't get to go through that refining, and they don't become present. They stay stuck in depression. In fact, as an example, I have a neighbor I gave a book to, and she was resigned. She was lost in her mind of, having gone through severe abuse and hiding from it. She was just kind of huddled in a ball on her porch. One day I gave her a book, and now every day since, she's like, "Hey, I gave your book to my therapist, and now I'm using it every day." And she's got this light in her eyes and this hope for life, and she's present again, and she's like smiling. And it's like that grieving, that's part of that grieving process, working through, I don't know. I kind of rambled there. So like, what comes up as you hear that?
Well, yesterday I did a free course, grieving course for women, and that very thing that you experienced happened with me too, and it's part of what we talk about. So one of the things is feeling the feeling. So what I had the ladies do was, okay, I want you to. My whole theme is based on an inner garden. So it's like, okay, what are your weed thoughts? So we had crabgrass, tansy, and dandelion, and so they just picked a thought, and it could be I'm not enough, or I'm not worthy, I'll never be happy again. And, for most of us, and I had them say it out loud because that's so important. You gotta move that energy of that thought wherever it's sitting in your body and move it out. And the movement allows for it to transform into something else, and also vacates that space so that you can bring positive stuff back in. Right. So, and it was interesting, every comment that was made, every single one of us have had those thoughts go through our minds, right? And so the next step was, okay, so what's your flower thought? So my favorite flowers are peony, rose, and a trillium. So we took those weed thoughts and created flower thoughts, and basically all it was flipping the first thought into from a negative to a positive, and saying that out loud. And, it's like affirmations, similar work to that. But like, I'll never be happy becomes I deserve happiness always in every moment.
Yeah.
So things like that are so important to, and like you said, a lot of times people stuff that stuff, but the important thing is you can't stuff it. You got to feel it. You got to speak it. You got to feel where it feels in your body.
That's the uncomfortable part, right? That's
right,
it can be
right.
really,
that's
really
what people
uncomfortable.
don't want to do. But that's the most important thing to do. And that's why, a lot of times with a lot of the self-development stuff, the big teachers of the day, they say, don't think about what happened, just create your future. Practice what, say these affirmations every single day, pretend until it finally happens. But the truth of the matter is it might happen temporarily because, that's how manifesting works,
it's
right?
Come up again,
but it'll come up again. And so you have to go back to those feelings. That's why I say grieving how we're conditioned. We have to remember that we've got to go back to that inner child, that younger version of ourselves, wherever we was, where those first things started happening, that we created meaning around who we are, and work on those. Because if you don't, it's like painting over,
Well, so
it's
around
gonna bleed
that,
through eventually, right? Like
right,
it's
exactly.
it's gonna bubble to the surface, and
right.
When you go through that process, it definitely isn't easy. Some things are easier than you thought, and then when you get through it, at least in my experience, is like, damn it, I wish I would have done that sooner. But I've been carrying this, for so long.
Right.
And then there's this feeling of like lifting and almost physical weight being shifted and given away, given back, almost like back to God or back to the universe. Like, thank you for the experience. Kind of, thank you. Here, have this back.
kind of, yeah.
Yeah, kind of. Thank you. I don't know yet. I'm still learning exactly all the reasons why it happened, but I'll be open to it.
Yep.
But here, take this back and I don't know, the feeling. I'm sure it's a little different for everybody, but at least that was my experience. Is a weight lifted off as soon as I did that.
I have a thought around that. One of the examples I use in the training is around the idea that your house burns down and all of your loved things are in it and they're gone. They're just gone. And you have this shock of like, that just happened. Right. And there's this denial and this bargaining, like, I want my house back. I don't want this to happen. You go through all this stuff but it's just gone. And you look down and there's a gold necklace and it's your grandmother's favorite necklace that was passed on for generations. And this is what people do is they'll pick that up and they'll say, well, at least I have this. And then from that, they rebuild a new story and they remember all the good memories about that thing. And it kind of takes away some of the old stuff, but then they start to rebuild a new story from that seedling. It's like transforming the flowers, that we go from grief to gratitude. At least I have this. There was a woman the other day I was talking to, and she said, my mom has passed away, but at least, and then she went right into her, at least, at least I have this. And sometimes that seed of hope and gratitude is enough to rebuild a life. Yeah. I mean, do you have some thoughts around that?
It's like, when we're grieving, a lot of times we want to put ourselves in a box, let's just hole up in the corner of this little box. It doesn't have any doors or windows and we'll just stay there. Not really doing any work, just staying in a safe place. Right. But as we go to work on stuff and, we find those little things like that necklace or that sign, we remember, memories come up, we can create windows in the box, right? So the windows at least allow us to see out, right? And then having those windows gives us the opportunity to maybe create some doors. And then, eventually maybe we'll walk out the door and check out what's around us. Yeah. But we can always come back to that safe place. That can always be a haven, but it should be a haven of, when you said letting go, the word that came to me was surrender. We just got to surrender to, I like the word surrender because it's not like you're giving up anything necessarily. It's more like I'm just surrendering to the divine. I'm surrendering to the goodness of the world. And, I'm just going to have faith and I'm going to trust. And I think surrender is just really important. In that experience I shared with you about that meditation I did, that's one of the things that I experienced was him surrendering to my death is coming. I'm okay with it. I'm ready to go. And once he made that choice, I felt that peace that he felt. And I'm like, I can do this too. I can surrender to what's happening around me and just allow the peace in.
Nick, you had a aha moment.
Oh yeah,
there.
I did right there. Yeah. Well, the word surrender, I use it, I hear it, I say it in a way I think I understand it. I just looked it up while we're talking here. The word surrender stems from sur, meaning over, and render, to give back. And to give back. And you look at this case where your husband's about to pass away and you're giving him back over to the other side, right? Yeah. That got me emotional.
That's
the giving back the grief, like the emotions and all the stuff to move through it. And that's, I keep doing this, like passing it along, like taking it off my shoulders.
Even the idea of the haven is you're giving back to the world now. You're getting back into the world. Keep going, Ryan.
That was just exactly it. Is that, I wasn't thinking about so much as surrender.
Yeah.
But now that you guys mentioned that, then that is really what it is surrendering to that, and then giving back, and then allowing that remembrance of really who you are and what you're capable of.
I think too that giving and receiving is so, many of us are just we're so used to giving. We don't know how to receive, and a lot of times, especially with people that are grieving the loss of a loved one, people have a hard time. You lose people because they don't know what to do. They're afraid to ask how to help or whatever. But sometimes when people offer to help us, we say, no, I'm okay. But I had to learn the art of receiving and just say, okay, they're offering to, okay, what do you need? I don't know. I need my garden weeded, or I need some errands run. And the very act of, I don't know who it was that said this. Some teacher that talked about when somebody offers to give to you and you say no, you're not only negating the experience for yourself of receiving, but you're preventing them from giving. And the very act of their giving is so important to their growth. So giving and receiving is reciprocal, and it needs to be done.
There has to be. Yeah, there has to be. I mean, you think of somebody coming out, like I think of battle, and they raise the white flag and they surrender. There has to be a receiver. They're giving themselves to the receiver. And you talk about the giving and receiving, like if you're not receiving, and then it can't be a surrender. Like there has to be a receiver and a giver. Like that just blows my mind. I mean, that's some format of surrendering that I hadn't thought of before, is the idea that it has to be both.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. And for us to move forward through grief, we have to open up that receiving vessel.
Yeah.
Window, door, whatever it is. And know that we deserve it. We're worthy of whatever it is that people want to help to support us. So that's giving and receiving.
Oh, Ryan, do you have some thoughts that came up right there?
So yeah, that's funny that you can see that or read that
on
a little tiny screen.
Yeah.
I had another giant, Sandra Berger, that I was talking about in some of this, in the grieving process, and we build up these containers, and she talked about how the box or the container that we've built, the walls can be so thick that this process of almost tearing down those walls or thinning out those walls can be a process, and doing it by ourselves sometimes is can be a hard thing, and that could be the story we tell ourselves too, I guess, that it's hard. But really, all the habits and all of the things that we've done can create a thick wall, and to lean on others and to ask them what to do. Like this to me is so valuable for people that have thick walls or a container that they've built up, to see somebody else that's gone through it and learn some tools that they can do and to thin those walls out, then to be able to break through and find the courage and the strength that man, then they wish they would have done it sooner, but they're glad that they did it.
Yeah.
And so that kind of hit me right there, is that we build up these walls and these containers from whatever we've gone through. But if you'll be aware and conscious to the thing, to that hey, I'm going through this and I need some help, or I reach out, then you can start moving through it. You can start the healing process and grow.
It reminds me of Despicable Me, the villain, and he's all guarded up in his house and there's no way to get in. There's rockets and missiles and pyramid, all this stuff. It's impossible to get in. And the little girls bring Girl Scout cookies and he can't resist, right? He has to receive them in. And sometimes it's that little thing that gets in and it changes everything. The whole dynamic changes, right?
Right.
And I have to tell you real quick on that thought, because that's what happened with me. There's people, those comments just got me. Sorry, but
amazing
people on this podcast right now: Amanda Monk, Carrie, Shauna Lee, Diana. They've reached out. They're intuitive. Sandra Berger. I didn't say a freaking thing. I posted some stuff, but it wasn't their job or their responsibility. I don't, I didn't say this is on you. Those people, oh my gosh, they're my angels. And they reached out and helped me to grow through the process. So anyway, thank you for doing that, those of you that are on here, and for you as well. because Paul, I know that this episode was very much it for me. I'm taking it on. It's selfish, but I'm taking it on. I appreciate you for these things because I know again that the universe has my back. That there's tribe members and people out there that are experiencing these things and heavier things even, but we can have each other's back. And thanks, Amanda.
Yeah. I mean, that's what this is all, community. That's what this is all about, connection.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't go through these things alone, and we shouldn't. We're not made that way. And, seeing other people, you're right, Ryan, the comments are just amazing. And it's, bringing up things for me too. And everybody's going through stuff, and, rather than shrinking back, let's grow and connect and, talk each other through this and help each other.
Paula, if I were to ask you, because I want to take the 5 minutes that we talked about in the beginning before the show, I want to do that still. But if I were to ask you, if you were to give yourself some wisdom, if you were to go back in time, be able to be with yourself before all of this and give yourself some wisdom to carry you through, what would you share?
Probably. I just wrote an article, about the meaning of things, the meaning that we give things. And what I wrote in the article was about me, like I was 9 or 10 years old. And so this would be all about the importance of meaning and to really think about things before you give it a meaning. And this story, I'll try to make it quick, but
you're good. We got time.
Okay, cool. When I was 9 or 10, Donny Osmond was really big, right? And my family, extended family, we always used to do a gift exchange at Christmas. And my mom asked me, what do you, Aunt Carol got your name. She wants some ideas. What do you want? And there was only one thing I wanted. I wanted the Donny Osmond album, right? So
Nick went through a huge Donny Osmond phase.
I did, yeah. That's all.
Keep going.
Yeah, so Donny Osmond album, that's what I wanted. So our party, the day comes, so we exchange gifts, and my aunt gives me my gift, and it's like this big. And I was immediately crushed because, an album is like this big, right? Back in the day, it wasn't cassettes or CDs, right? So I knew I didn't get what I wanted. And for me that, had problems with expressing my truth and asking for things, it was like another confirmation that what's the point of asking for anything? Nobody ever listens to what I want to say. So that's the meaning that I gave that. I opened my gift. It was a beautiful watch. I thanked my aunt. I promptly went to my room and started crying. And so my mom comes into the room and she's like, what's wrong? And I said, I didn't get my album. That's what I asked for. And she got mad at me because, she's like, you're just being ungrateful. And, she left me in the room. And so anyway, years ago, probably in my early 40s, I went to this event, and they asked us to do this exercise to pick something that happened in our childhood that we gave big meaning to, that was still affecting us now, right? So I thought I chose that. And so they said, okay, so write down what your meaning was. Okay, so I did that. Then they said, step to the left and think of another meaning. And so I thought about it for a minute, and I thought, well, maybe my mom forgot to tell her what I wanted. And they said, so I wrote that down. And then they said, okay, so now step to the right of that experience and find another meaning. And so then I thought, well, maybe my aunt did know that I wanted that album, but maybe she thought a watch would be better. It would last longer. It would last way longer than the music fads that were happening at the time, right? And so when I thought about that, I was just like, wow, all these, I instinctively made this meaning that I was unworthy of being heard, when it could have been any of those two other meanings or any others. And neither of those other two meanings had anything to do with who I am as a person. Nothing. And so what I would say, because I spent my life, a lot of my growing up, worried about what other people think about me, just being worried about that. And so what I would say to myself is, like you said here, what meaning are you creating? And really think about, before I saddle myself for the rest of my life with this meaning that is negative, what else could it mean? So I guess would just see a bigger picture, of and it takes time. A lot of times we don't see that kind of stuff until, way down the road. But that's what I would tell myself is, really, really think about your meanings, and are they really true?
I think that's the key right there that you're hitting on is everything that we're telling ourselves is a story. There may have been events. But the experience is all made up. And so that meaning, like you're talking about, even the grieving, we get a chance to really move through it. But some people will say, I can't because, while other people with the same event are saying, I can because, and we've seen it over and over. And so it really is a story. The stories are impacting. In my book, The Art of Accomplishment, I talk about the cycle, this insanity cycle of having our history and our perceptions and our beliefs, and we hold on to them like they're truths for everybody.
Yeah.
And we could tell those stories convincingly to anybody, and they would listen to us and say, wow, that is a very convincing story. I believe you. And that's true, but it's all made up.
Right.
You talk about your memory being fuzzy. Like our memory is all made up. And so these stories are what carry forward. So I love that for wisdom is what story, what meaning are you giving it?
Right.
Because it could also be something else.
Right. If I had chose the other, either one of those, I might have freed myself up a little bit. I mean, obviously it wasn't the only thing that helped me decide that my voice didn't matter. But the one funny thing that happened in the end was years later, I told my mom about it. And for Christmas that year, I got my Donny Osmond album.
Oh, yeah.
Which album was it? Do you remember?
It was the greatest hits. He's in that Elvis-like looking suit.
Yeah.
But I don't have a record player anymore because, by that time we were past 8-track, CD, or cassette. Do you
still have the album?
I do.
My brother-in-law, ex-brother-in-law, makes bracelets out of albums. He can make that a bracelet that you can wear around forever, or you can keep it like it is as a collector's item.
Oh, that's a cool idea.
Collector's item for one. Yeah. But it's just messing with you.
That's a cool idea. I love that.
But that's a possibility too. He's phenomenal at it. But yeah, I mean, is there anything else you would share before we, and I think we're going to go out of the video a little different. I don't think we'll play the outro. We'll just use what you're going to do as the outro. Is there anything you want to share before we go to that?
I think that, I'll share about the importance of the body, because that's what's going to lead up into this little exercise that we're going to do, and just how important that is, and how, our body is with us for our entire life, right? It should be our best friend. We should listen to it. We should hear it. We should honor it. When it speaks to us through pain or intuition or stress or whatever, we should stop and listen and feel where that feeling is, and ask the questions like, what are you trying to tell me? What can I do for you? What do I need to know? And those were things that I struggled with a lot. And I still, it's still a challenge for me. But the whole idea is, our body is like our dashboard. If you think about a car, the dashboard tells you, oh, you might want to check the oil, the light will come on, or the gas is getting low, you might want to check that. And if you don't do any of those things, right, the car's not going to run. The same thing with our body. If we get those medical tests that say we should do this, or if we get a feeling in our body that doesn't quite feel right, or, or maybe just a thought in our head that there's a concern around something, if we don't do anything about it, the body's eventually going to wear out, right? The body is a great protector also. I'm grateful to my body for protecting me all those years before my appendix burst. It was trying to protect me, but it was also waiting for me to do something about it. And so I think connecting with your body is so important. Most of the time when we talk to ourselves, when we're looking in the mirror or getting dressed or whatever, it's usually negative stuff. It's never positive stuff like, wow, your hair looks great today. Usually I'm like, oh, my hair looks stupid. This thing's sticking out, so that's how we operate most of the time. And if we could just make a shift there. So this exercise that we're going to do is about that. It's just a real quick exercise. You can do it anytime. I actually came up with it when I actually found a meditation where you lay down and this person took you through a guided meditation where you connected with all your different body parts. But the problem with that was that I fell asleep. I'm one of those people, put me on a couch in front of a TV watching a movie and I'd fall asleep and I got to rewind it like 10 times to get the story right.
It takes me
So
10
I,
days
you know,
to watch a 2-hour
I'd be
movie.
asleep
Yeah.
by the time we got to my knees, and I missed the whole rest of the meditation, right? So in this one that we're going to do, we're actually sitting up and we're actually touching those parts of our body that we go through, and we're talking to each one and honoring it, and that way we're aware, and we're not asleep, we're not unconscious or any of that kind of stuff. And sometimes I like to do it too with like a stone, like a gemstone. Like when I do it with my ladies, we have a gemstone that is just kind of, you know, gemstones have great energy to them. Many of them have different qualities, and so we do that. We won't use those today, but you can, you know, like just have it set in front of you and connect with it. So that's kind of the whole premise around what we're going to do.
Perfect. So
and
the
I
floor
call
is
it
yours.
the body. Let me just pull up. Hang on a second. I need to.
I like how that goes into infinity.
Yeah.
That's your fractaled
Yeah.
screen there, Nick. I like that.
This person over here.
I just wave all the way down the line. See how it goes?
Look at the delay.
All right.
I like
See
that.
that?
Yeah, that's cool. So I call this the body gratitude exercise. So it's just a really way to connect with your body. And hang on a second. I'm going to get some music going. If I can get my mouse to work here. Okay, so tell me if you hear the music.
Yep.
And can you hear me over the music?
Yeah. Yep. You sound good.
Awesome.
I'm going to mute out.
Okay, so I want everybody to close your eyes. I want you to get in a position where you can touch your feet. So you might want to sit on the floor, or if you're in a chair where you can put your feet up, or you can reach down to the floor and touch your feet. So as I go through each body part, you're going to put your hands on that body part, and then I'm going to say some words that I want you to really think about and embody for yourself. All right, so close your eyes. Let's get started. So place your hands on your feet. Thank you for helping me to stand tall and proud, for helping me to balance and to keep moving. I love you and I hear you. Place your hands on your knees. Thank you for allowing me to walk, run, sit, and stand. I love you and I hear you. Place your hands on your legs. Thank you for walking with me and allowing me to stand and move. I love you and I hear you. Place your hands on your hips. Thank you for supporting the weight of my body and allowing range of motion. I love you and I hear you. Place your hands on your stomach. Thank you for nourishing my body and cleansing my body of toxins. I love you and I hear you. Place your hands on your back. Thank you for providing structure and support for my body and for protecting my spinal cord. I love you and I hear you. Place your hands on your spinal cord. Thank you for connecting my brain with my body so I can control my movements. I love you and I hear you. Place your hands on your rib cage. Thank you for protecting my heart and lungs and supporting my arms. I love you and I hear you. Place your hands over your lungs. Thank you for allowing me to breathe in oxygen and love and exhale out carbon dioxide and stress. I love you and I hear you. Place your hands over your heart. Thank you for pumping lifeblood through my body and for being an anchor for love. I love you and I hear you. Place your hands on your shoulders. Thank you for giving me the widest range of motion in my body and supporting my arms. I love you and I hear you. Put your hands on your arms. Thank you for helping me to carry things and to hug those I love. I love you and I hear you. Clasp your hands together. Thank you for the gift of writing and touch, and to hold the hands of my loved ones and touch their beautiful faces. I love you and I hear you. Place your hands on your throat. Thank you for the gift of expression so that I can speak my truth and being the passageway for air, food, and liquid. I love you and I hear you. Place your hands on the sides or back of your neck. Thank you for supporting my head and brain and protecting the nerves that carry information to my body, and for allowing me to turn my head in all directions. I love you and I hear you. Place your hands over your mouth. Thank you for providing a way for me to communicate and to bring in nourishment, and to taste food, to express my voice in words and song, and to kiss those I love. I love you and I hear you. Place your hands on your nose. Thank you for allowing me to smell roses, fresh cut grass, the sweet smell of babies, and the food I eat, and especially the scent of my loved ones. I love you and I hear you. Place your hands over your ears. Thank you for the gift of hearing this beautiful music, hearing the sound of others' voices and the sound of my own voice. I love you and I hear you. Place your hands over your eyes. Thank you for allowing me to see the beauty in the world, the beauty in a loved one's eyes, and the beauty in my own eyes. I love you and I hear you. Now place your hands on your head. Thank you for protecting my brain, my eyes, and my mouth. I love you and I hear you. Put your hands again on your head. This is for your brain. Thank you for my thoughts, memories, feelings, imagination, and managing the unconscious processes in my body. Thank you for the ability to learn. I love you and I hear you. Now I want you to place both your hands over your heart. Thank you, my body, for always being here for me, for being my best friend, for protecting me, for whispering what you need. I promise you that I will listen for those whispers. I will respond to the pain and stress and ask you what you need from me. I will always take care of you and am grateful that you are sharing my life journey with me. I love you and I hear you. Now just take a few moments, a little bit of time, and just feel the good feelings that's running through your body. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. I hope you enjoyed that.
I have a smooth feeling. I don't know, like I can't describe it. Flow or smooth, floating. Thank you.
You're welcome. And you know, I didn't cover all body parts. You know, you might want to, if people have specific, like, you know, maybe want to do more with the legs, calves, and thighs, or maybe where your hormones are happening or anything like that. It's just what I do. It's a simple one. You can do it yourself. Yeah. Put on some good music and the whole part of saying I love you and I hear you is having your body know that that you're there for it and that it can trust you and that you're going to listen and be a partner. So
that's a beautiful way to wrap up a show. I'm blown away. You know, I really hear in this whole journey that you're sharing the idea that navigating grief isn't so much about navigating grief as much as embracing grief and allowing it to do what it's designed to do, which is to get you back into life.
Right.
Yeah, beautiful. Any final thoughts from either of you?
It was excellent. I just appreciate your time and your talents and as different as it might sound, I really appreciate your experiences that you went through. Because of those experiences, you were able to grow and to come out of it and to be able to help others to do the same thing and to be empowered and to feel. And so I appreciate that so much. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
And I'm grateful for being on the show today. I appreciate your time to allow me to share my story. And, you know, I am grateful for everything that's happened to me. And, you know, I wouldn't have met you two, right, if things hadn't happened the way they did. So there's good in everything. Just that's my final thought is there's good in everything. There's a gift in everything. You just got to find it.
Well, hang
We're
tight.
right on time.
Yeah,
That's
we'll
perfect.
go ahead and wrap this up. And for those that are watching, continue to do giant things. Allow for your grief, show your gratitude, and we will see you in the next episode.
Love you too.